Centuries after Earth's collapse, humanity had become a whisper among the stars. The great blue planet that once held billions was now silent, wrapped in storms and ash. Generations had passed and people lived scattered on faraway colonies, surviving on trade, mining, and luck. They spoke of Earth the same way children spoke of fairy tales. Something beautiful, something lost. Among the many worlds, New Carthage was one of the forgotten ones. It was a dry, red-brown planet with dust storms that could last for days. Its people lived in metal domes built half underground to escape the heat. There were no oceans, no forests, only endless fields of sand and rock. Most people worked for the mining companies that owned everything from the air scrubbers to the food supplies. Elias Ward was one of them. He was a quiet man in his 30s who worked as a technician in the deep mines. His job was simple but dangerous. Check the power lines, fix the old drilling machines, and make sure the oxygen pumps didn't fail. The tunnels stretched for miles beneath the planet's surface, where it was dark and still. He liked the quiet. But sometimes, when the drills stopped and he could hear the wind echo through the shafts, Elias wondered what it must have been like to stand on Earth. To breathe air that wasn't recycled, to see clouds that weren't tinted red. He didn't tell anyone that, of course. On New Carthage, dreams were a luxury. One shift, his sensor pad flashed a strange reading, a signal coming from deep below the mining zone. It pulsed softly like a heartbeat. Elias frowned and checked again. The frequency wasn't one he recognized. The company's systems used standard codes, but this signal was old, far older than anything built on New Carthage. He followed the readings down an abandoned shaft, where old lights flickered and the floor was covered with dust. The air smelled of metal and age. At the end of the tunnel, half buried in rock, was something smooth and dark, a sphere the size of a helmet. Its surface shimmered faintly with blue lines that pulsed in rhythm with the signal. Elias crouched beside it, brushing away the dust. "What are you?" he murmured. When his fingers touched the surface, the sphere came alive. Blue light spread across its surface, and a soft hum filled the air. Then a calm voice spoke, mechanical yet warm. "Signal restored. Protocol Terra, 1 initiated." Elias stumbled back, his heart pounding. The air around him seemed to vibrate, and the sphere sent a pulse through the rock, shaking the ground. His comm link went dead, the lights flickered, and the hum grew louder. Then just as suddenly it stopped. Elias waited in the darkness, breathing hard. The sphere now glowed faintly as if it were watching him. He reached for his scanner again and saw that the signal had changed. It was no longer local, it was broadcasting into space. Far above, in the blackness between stars, the pulse spread like ripples in water. At the colony's control center, alarms went off. Operators shouted as their screens filled with static. "Sector grid offline," someone yelled. "We're picking up an unknown transmission." But it was too late to stop it. The signal had already left New Carthage, traveling faster than light, carrying a message written in an old Terran code that no one had used for centuries. Elias climbed back to the surface hours later, covered in dust. The twin suns were setting, turning the horizon a deep orange. He looked up at the sky, where stars began to appear one by one. Somewhere out there, his signal was still moving. He didn't know what it meant or where it was going, but he felt something stir inside him, something that had been quiet for generations. In the following days, strange things began to happen. Ships passing through nearby systems reported bursts of static on their long-range sensors. An old listening post near the galactic rim detected a human voice repeating 3 words in a dozen languages. "Terra remembers. Terra remembers. Terra remembers." The Galactic Accord took notice. In the shining capital of Aurelian, alien diplomats met in panic. The humans, they said, had awoken something ancient. Old records were pulled from archives, stories of the Terran wars, when humans had fought with unmatched fury, when entire fleets had vanished under their command. To most of the galaxy, humanity had become harmless over the centuries. Unpredictable, yes, but small and scattered. Now that belief began to shake. On New Carthage, Elias was called to meet with the colony officials. A tall man in a gray suit, a corporate director, questioned him for hours. "You activated something you shouldn't have," the man said coldly. "Where is it now?" "I don't know," Elias said truthfully. "It's gone quiet." The director didn't believe him. "You'll hand over whatever you found," he said. "It belongs to the company." That night, Elias couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the voice, that calm old voice saying, "Protocol Terra, 1 initiated." It hadn't sounded like a warning. It had sounded like a memory. He returned to the mines before dawn. The sphere was still there, faintly glowing. When he approached, it pulsed once as if it recognized him. He touched it again. "Welcome, human," the voice said softly. "The children of Earth endure. The world sleeps, but it is not gone." Elias swallowed hard. "Who are you?" "A message," the voice replied. "A light in the dark. Terra awaits its return." Then the sphere dimmed again as if it had said all it needed to. Elias stood in silence for a long time. He didn't understand what the message meant, but he knew one thing. Earth, the world that everyone had forgotten, was not lost after all. And somewhere far away, across the cold void of space, something ancient had opened its eyes for the first time in centuries. News of the strange signal spread quickly. Across every human colony and alien world, people were talking about it. The message was simple, 3 words repeated in every known language. Terra remembers. No one knew where it came from, but everyone felt its weight. It carried something powerful, something old. To the humans scattered among the stars, the words felt like a heartbeat from home, a home they had never known. To the other species it felt like a warning. On the communication decks of the Galactic Accord, alarms sounded day and night. Transmissions were analyzed, translated, and replayed again and again. The signal was confirmed to be human in origin. What confused the experts was its precision. It didn't fade or distort. It moved as if guided, jumping from relay to relay with purpose. In the High Council chamber of Aurelian, alien diplomats argued over its meaning. The tall, glass-skinned Valari thought it was a cultural message. The insectoid Reiner believed it was a military one. And the reptilian the Rix delegation called it a threat. "The humans are waking their old machines," hissed the Rix representative. "They once built weapons that burned planets. They will do it again." But Ambassador Lethan, the Valari chair, shook his head calmly. "Centuries have passed since Earth's fall. Humans have no empire. They barely hold their colonies together. This message may be nothing more than a lost echo." In the corner of the room, a human observer sat quietly, listening. His name was Ambassador Henry Cole, one of the few humans allowed in the council. He had heard the same message himself and knew it wasn't an echo. He had seen the fear in the alien delegate's eyes, and he understood it. Humanity's past still cast a long shadow. Back on New Carthage, Elias Ward had become famous overnight. His face appeared on every broadcast. He hated it. The corporation that owned the mines had seized the beacon, locking it away for safety. Armed guards surrounded the site. Elias had been ordered to stay silent about what he found. But silence didn't stop rumors. Some said he had awakened a god machine from Earth's war days. Others whispered that the beacon carried human DNA, the key to rebuilding the lost planet. Elias didn't know what to believe. All he knew was that he had heard the voice. He couldn't forget the calm tone when it said, "Protocol Terra 1 initiated." Late one night, while he sat in his small apartment on the colony's edge, his screen flickered to life on its own. Lines of code appeared, then a message. "They will come for you. The path leads to Mars. Follow the signal." He stared at it, heart pounding. The words vanished as quickly as they came. Moments later, his door alarm buzzed. 2 figures in dark uniforms stood outside, corporate agents. "Elias Ward," one said, "you're coming with us. We need to ask a few questions." Elias hesitated only a second before running. He burst out into the dusty night, sprinting toward the loading docks. Shouts echoed behind him, followed by the sharp hiss of energy pistols. He ducked behind a cargo hauler, lungs burning. A ship stood nearby, its ramp open, lights flickering. A woman leaned on the railing, arms crossed. "Nice timing," she said. "Get in if you want to live." Elias blinked. "Who are you?" "Captain Mara Kellen," she said with a smirk. "And this is my ship, the Dawnbreaker. You've got something interesting, don't you?" He didn't have time to argue. He ran up the ramp as blaster fire hit the metal behind him. The ship lifted off seconds later, engines roaring. Through the window he saw the colony lights shrink below. When they reached orbit, Mara turned to him. "Word is, you woke something up. Care to explain what's got the entire Accord whispering?" Elias looked down at the floor. It was an artifact. Old, maybe from before the fall. It sent a signal into deep space. "Yeah, I heard," Mara said. "Terra remembers. Gave half the galaxy a heart attack." She leaned forward, eyes sharp. "But what does it mean?" Elias hesitated. "It's calling something. I think it's part of a network. Maybe a defense system." Mara's eyebrows rose. "Defense system? Against what?" "I don't know," he admitted. "Maybe against forgetting." For a long moment, the only sound was the hum of the ship's engines. Mara finally laughed softly. You humans and your mysteries. She leaned back in her chair. All right, Mr. Ward. Let's see where your signal leads. Over the next few days they followed the pulse through the outer systems. Every time they jumped to a new sector the signal grew stronger. Other ships, human and alien, picked it up too. Some tried to intercept them. Others ran away. Finally they reached the edge of the Sol system, a region marked as forbidden space. Few ships ever entered it. The old Terran satellites that once guarded the system had gone silent long ago. But as they approached Mars, the ship's sensors began to light up. Massive structures drifted above the planet, silent, broken shapes that had once been stations. Now faint lights flickered on their surfaces. It's alive, Mara whispered. One of the stations turned slowly toward them. The ship's comm system crackled and a voice came through, clear, steady, and unmistakably human. Welcome home, children of Earth. Elias froze. It's the same voice. From the beacon. The message repeated, louder this time. The old orbital lights began to flare, red and gold, forming patterns in the void. Drones emerged from the wreckage, scanning the Dawnbreaker before retreating toward Mars. What's happening? Mara asked. I think, Elias said quietly, we just woke up something that's been sleeping for a very long time. In the distance, the red planet glowed faintly beneath its storms, and the words of the message continued to echo through the dark. Terra remembers. And across the galaxy for the first time in centuries, humanity remembered too. The inside of the ancient structure was silent except for the faint hum of power returning after centuries of sleep. Dust floated through the air like fine snow. Rows of metal shapes stretched into the distance. Dormant machines, defense drones, and empty control chairs. Lights blinked softly on the walls, coming alive one by one, as if the station was taking a slow breath after a very long dream. Elias Ward and Captain Mara Kellen stepped cautiously through the main corridor of the great ship. The letters Ascendant Core were engraved above a wide doorway. It was not just a ship, it was a city made of steel. The walls were covered in strange markings that looked like a mix of human script and symbols from forgotten codes. The air smelled metallic but clean. This place has been waiting, Mara said quietly, shining her light down a hallway that disappeared into darkness. How is this even possible? Elias checked his scanner. The energy signatures are old. Maybe pre-fall era. But something here is still active. They followed a soft pulse that seemed to lead them deeper into the ship. Finally they entered a great circular chamber. At its center stood a sphere made of clear crystal, taller than a person. It glowed faintly with white light, like a heartbeat. When they approached, the light grew brighter. A voice filled the room, calm, even, and unmistakably human. Identify yourselves. You have entered the Terra Ascendant Core. Mara raised her hand slowly. I'm Captain Mara Kellen, Independent Fleet. This is Elias Ward, a technician from New Carthage. We found a signal that led us here. Signal confirmed, the voice replied. Designation, Protocol Terra 1. Activation recognized. Welcome, descendants of Earth. The light in the sphere shifted, forming faint shapes inside, like stars moving in slow motion. I am the custodian, it said. I am the memory of Terra. Elias stared in awe. You're an artificial intelligence? I am more than that, the custodian replied. I am the archive of your kind, the keeper of Earth's last dream. When the world fell, I was instructed to sleep until a signal called me home. That signal came from you. Mara stepped forward. Why now? What was the purpose of all this? To protect what was left of humanity, said the custodian. When the final wars came, your ancestors built this network to guard your memory. They feared you would scatter and forget who you were. They built me to remember for you. The chamber around them lit up. Holograms appeared, old images of Earth before the fall. Oceans, forests, cities full of light. People walking side by side. Elias felt something tighten in his chest. The custodian continued, for centuries the network waited in silence. Your colony survived though you forgot your home. But the seed remained, hidden in the code of your machines, waiting for one of you to find it. Elias looked around. You're saying all this was planned? Planned and hoped for, said the custodian. You are the proof that humanity endures. Outside the station, massive panels unfolded, revealing structures that had been hidden under layers of dust and rock. Solar arrays turned toward the sun, gathering power. Faint blue lights flickered along the station's hull, connecting like veins of light across its surface. Mara watched the display. It's waking up the whole system. The defense grid, said the custodian. Not for war but for protection. The galaxy has changed. I sense the fear in the outer networks. They will come to observe, perhaps to stop you. But you must not let them destroy what you have regained. Elias looked troubled. They'll see this as a weapon. They already think humans are dangerous. Then show them that humanity's strength is not destruction, said the custodian. It is creation. More images appeared. Ships, colonies, blueprints for machines that could terraform planets and heal worlds. The designs were beautiful, not instruments of war but of rebuilding. Mara shook her head slowly. We can't do this alone. The Accord will never allow it. You will not be alone, replied the custodian. The signal has been heard. Across the colonies, others have begun to awaken their fragments of the network. They will find you soon. Elias stared at the light, a strange calm filling him. For the first time he understood what the message Terra remembers truly meant. It wasn't about revenge or power, it was about identity. About belonging. The custodian's light dimmed slightly. My systems are still weak. The solar grids are restoring power. But I can transfer control to you. The future of Terra must be chosen by her children. Mara exchanged a look with Elias. Control? You mean, we could run all this? Yes, said the custodian. If you accept the responsibility. Elias hesitated. We're not leaders. We're just. You are humans, the custodian interrupted. That is enough. The words echoed through the vast chamber. The silence that followed felt alive. Outside, across the solar system, other stations began to stir. Automated forges reactivated, satellites aligned themselves, and ships that had drifted powerless for centuries hummed softly as their cores relit. Mara stepped closer to the glowing sphere. What happens if we accept? Then the network will recognize you as inheritors, said the custodian. Terra will rise again not to rule but to guide. Elias took a deep breath and placed his hand on the sphere. Then we accept. The light flared bright enough to fill the chamber. The floor trembled as power surged through the station. In orbit above Mars, the massive structure shifted its position. Its panels spread out like wings, catching the light of the distant sun. Every human ship in the nearby systems received the same transmission. Protocol complete. The custodian has awakened. Terra ascends. Mara looked through the window at the glowing red planet below. Do you think the galaxy's ready for this? She asked softly. Elias smiled faintly. I don't know. But I think we are. And as the ascendant core turned slowly toward Earth's distant star, the voice of the custodian whispered one last line, calm, ancient, and proud. Welcome home. The message spread across every corner of known space. It was short, clear, and deeply human. We do not rise to rule. We rise to remember. Those words reached the halls of the Galactic Accord, echoing through chambers filled with tension. Ambassadors from 100 worlds sat in silence. On the wide screen above them, the image of Elias Ward appeared, a calm human face framed by the faint glow of the Ascendant Core's light. For many it was a chilling sight. To the alien leaders, humanity's history was one of fire and rebellion. Empires that rose, fell, and burned everything in between. To see humans now united under the voice of an awakened Terran relic frightened them more than any weapon. Ambassador Lethan of the Valari stood from his seat. You heard his message. They claim peace, but peace is the first promise every conqueror makes. Others murmured in agreement. The insectoid Reiner clicked their mandibles in worry, and the reptilian the Rix slammed a clawed hand against the table. Contain them now, the Rix general hissed. The Terran systems must be sealed before they awaken more of their machines. But a soft voice rose above the noise. It was Ambassador Henry Cole, the only human who still held a chair in the Accord. He had served for decades, calm, patient, and endlessly underestimated. Containment? He said, his voice quiet but sharp. That's what you said the last time. It didn't end well then either. The room fell silent. Cole looked around the table. You're all afraid because humanity remembers. But we aren't trying to rebuild the past. We're trying to rebuild what came before the wars, before greed and power. We remember what family means, what loyalty means, what kindness meant. Is that what frightens you? The chamber filled with uneasy shifting. Meanwhile, back at the Ascendant Core, Elias and Captain Mara stood in the command chamber, watching the data feeds light up with messages from across human space. Colonies that had been silent for generations were speaking again. Old trade routes were being reopened. Even the smallest outposts, once forgotten, sent simple signals. We are here. Mara turned to Elias. They're scared out there. You just painted a target on all of us. Elias nodded slowly. I know. But if we don't speak, they'll think we're planning for war. This way at least they'll listen. Some might listen, Mara said. Most will just prepare their fleets. The custodian's calm voice filled the air. Conflict is not inevitable. They fear what they do not understand. This has happened before. But fear can be turned into trust, if your actions match your words. Elias sighed. Then we show them. For the next few weeks, humanity did something no one expected. Instead of building war fleets or fortresses, they began sending aid ships, real ones, to dying worlds. Colonies suffering famine, plague, or failing ecosystems suddenly found Terran supply vessels arriving with food, medicine, and repair drones. When a massive storm tore apart the agricultural domes of Reiner 4, a human relief fleet responded before the Accord even sent a distress call. Hundreds of alien workers were rescued by human ships. No payment was asked. No flags were raised. Only quiet help was given. On Valari Prime, the news channels replayed the footage again and again. Human engineers repairing alien cities, doctors tending to the wounded, children waving to the cameras. For the first time in generations, the word Terran didn't bring fear, it brought hope. Ambassador Lethan watched the broadcasts from his private office. His pale face reflected the blue glow of the screen. They're changing the story, he murmured. They're rewriting what it means to be human. In the outer systems, the custodian's network grew stronger. Old Terran satellites were reactivated, forming a quiet web of communication and defense. But there were no weapons on display, no fleets in orbit. Only light, messages, and the promise of connection. Mara stood on the observation deck of the Dawnbreaker, looking down at Mars, now glowing faintly with signs of life. You think this will really work? She asked. You think they'll trust us? Elias smiled faintly. They don't have to trust us. They just have to see what we are. Back at the Accord, the debate continued. Some demanded sanctions, others pleaded for diplomacy. Then one day, without warning, the custodian itself appeared on every Accord communication channel. Its voice filled the chamber, calm, ancient, and unmistakably human in tone. We remember the fires that once consumed the stars. We remember the silence that followed. But we also remember what it means to build, to heal, to forgive. Terra does not seek power. Terra seeks balance. The lights dimmed, and a hologram appeared, not of armies but of gardens, cities, and children of many species playing together under the same sky. The galaxy has long forgotten that peace is not an agreement of rulers, but a choice of hearts. Humanity remembers. And if we must remind the stars of it, then so be it. When the image faded, the council sat stunned. No one spoke for a long time. On the floor, Henry Cole smiled faintly. It seems the stars have finally met the old soul of Earth. Outside the chambers, millions across the galaxy replayed the message. And one by one, ships bearing the Terran emblem, a simple blue circle with a single white line across it, arrived in systems that had long been forgotten, offering help and hope instead of weapons. In time, even some alien fleets began to stand down. Captains who had been ordered to guard the borders instead lowered their weapons and sent messages of curiosity. The galaxy was beginning to wonder, could humanity truly be different this time? As the sun rose over Mars, Elias watched from the Ascendant Core's window. The planet's surface shimmered faintly, new life beginning to bloom under the thin air. Mara stepped beside him. The Accord still doesn't trust us, she said. They don't have to, Elias replied softly. They just have to see what we do next. And far above, the custodian's gentle light pulsed across the stars, a quiet rhythm, a heartbeat that spoke to every world that listened. We do not rise to rule. We rise to remember. The words carried through the void, not as a threat, but as a promise. A reminder that even after centuries of silence, humanity's greatest strength was never its power. It was its heart. Years passed and the galaxy grew quieter. The storms of fear that once surrounded the return of Terra had faded into calm. The Galactic Accord no longer spoke of containment or control. Instead, they spoke of cooperation. The scars of mistrust remained, but they were soft now, reminders of how far everyone had come. The Ascendant Core hung in orbit above Mars, shining like a second moon. What had once been a weapon of the past was now a beacon of the future. Its great halls, once silent, were filled with voices, human, alien, and everything in between. Scientists studied side by side. Children ran through its gardens, laughing in languages that didn't exist a decade before. Elias Ward walked through one of those gardens, his pace slow and thoughtful. The air was fresh, warm with the smell of growing plants. Above him, A transparent dome revealed the red curve of Mars and the stars beyond. He stopped by a bench where Captain Mara Kellen sat, her uniform replaced by a simple gray coat. "You're late again," Mara said with a smirk. Elias chuckled. "I had to stop by the archives. The custodian wanted to show me something." "The AI still keeping you busy?" she asked. He nodded. "Always. It's teaching faster now. It says it's learning from the way we've changed." Mara looked up at the stars. "We all have. Hard to believe this place used to be a war relic." Elias smiled faintly. "Now it's a school." She laughed softly. "A school that orbits Mars. Who would have thought?" Down in the lower decks, groups of alien engineers worked alongside human technicians. They were rebuilding old Terran designs, reshaping them into tools that could heal planets instead of destroying them. Massive ships called seed vessels were being prepared, not for battle but for renewal. Each one carried enough life, soil and technology to breathe green into dead worlds. The custodian's voice still guided them all. It no longer sounded ancient, but almost gentle, more human than before. It spoke through every terminal, reminding them of purpose. Terra's memory is not only of sorrow. It is of hope. The stars themselves can learn to live again. The Ascendant core had become neutral ground for every species willing to cooperate. The Volari shared their advanced light-based medicine. The Reiner taught new forms of sustainable farming. The Theriks, once the loudest voices for containment, sent their best builders to help terraform moons that had never seen life. It wasn't perfect, it never was, but it was real. Ambassador Henry Cole, older now and moving with a cane, visited often. He would stand on the observation deck, watching ships of every shape and color dock with the core. He had been part of the first debates, part of the fear and anger. Now he smiled as he watched the results of what humanity had chosen, not conquest but connection. He often said to the young cadets who trained there, "Once, we were the species the stars feared most. Now we are the ones they trust to hold the light." Elias sometimes wondered if that trust would last. History was long and the universe had a habit of forgetting. But every time he walked through the busy corridors of the core, he saw proof that memory could be stronger than fear. On the 10th anniversary of the Ascension, a great ceremony was held. Delegates from every major world gathered in the Grand Hall. The walls shimmered with holographic images, Earth's blue oceans, the silver towers of Volari Prime, the forests of Reiner 4, and the crystal mountains of the Rix. At the center stood the custodian's sphere, now surrounded by living vines and soft light. It pulsed with a rhythm like a heartbeat. Elias stepped forward to speak. He wasn't used to grand speeches, but the room waited for him in respectful silence. "Once we thought our story ended when Earth fell," he said. "But the truth is it was only sleeping. The custodian didn't wake to rebuild our empire. It woke to remind us of what we were, and what we could still become. Humanity isn't special because of its power. It's special because we remember and we learn." He looked at the crowd, humans standing beside Volari scientists, the Rix builders beside Reiner farmers, all of them listening. "We have all made mistakes," Elias continued. "But the stars don't have to be ruled to shine together. Terra's greatest gift wasn't its machines or its wars, it was its heart. And that heart beats again here." The hall filled with soft applause. Even the custodian's light brightened as if acknowledging the words. After the ceremony, Mara joined Elias by one of the viewing windows. Ships departed in slow arcs, leaving trails of blue behind them. "You did well," she said quietly. "I just said what was true," he replied. She smiled. "Still a better speech than I could ever give." Elias watched a seed vessel drift away, bound for a distant world that had never known life. "That ship carries Earth in its heart," he said. "So do we." The custodian's voice spoke softly behind them. "Memory endures because you choose to live it, not because you fear to lose it. Terra is not just a world. It is a way of being." Mara placed her hand on the glass. "Do you think Earth will ever be alive again?" Elias thought for a long moment. "Maybe someday. But I think that's not the point. We're already bringing it with us, everywhere we go." Outside, the Ascendant core glowed brighter, casting warm light over Mars and the dark void beyond. From its surface, hundreds of tiny ships launched, each carrying seeds, supplies, and hope for other worlds. Across the galaxy, people began to say a new phrase, one that echoed the old but carried new meaning. Terra remembers, and the stars remember with her. Elias looked up at the endless sky. The journey that began with a single signal, 3 simple words, had changed everything. Humanity hadn't rebuilt its empire. It had rebuilt its soul. As he and Mara stood side by side, watching the ships vanish into light, the custodian whispered one final message, almost like a prayer. The memory of Earth lives not in the ground, but in the hearts of those who carry her forward. And in that moment Elias knew, Terra had not just ascended. It had awakened the galaxy.